This is Facepalm America. I'm Beowulf Rockland. FacepalmAmerica.com is where you can find out more information about the show. And I was very lucky about 12 years or so. I was doing a syndicated radio program under an assumed name at the time. I called myself Derek Blair. And I interviewed a guy that was coming to the progressive prominence at the time. He was already very progressively prominent, and he was just starting a gig. I think it was a weekend gig at MSNBC. Well, a lot has changed since 2010, 2011, whatever time it was, and he's come a long way, baby. And he's come a long way from MSNBC. And he is not, since he had an empire of his own back then, a progressive political empire, to the extent that progressive political empires can exist. Cenk Uygur, he is one of the folks that I have greatly admired for his stridency and aggressiveness in putting forward the progressive worldview. And he's got a book out. He's called Justice is Coming, How Progressives Are Going to Take Over the Country and How America is Going to Love It. Cenk, thank you so much for being here on Facepalm America.
No problem, and thank you for that wonderful intro. I appreciate it, brother.
So, MSNBC, that must have been a very interesting and how shall I put it? Illuminating time in terms of the way that the media and the quote unquote progressive media works.
Yeah, indeed. So at the time, first I got brought in as a guest host.
Yeah.
And actually back then, God, the internet used to be a wonderful place before the trolls showed up. I think we can make it wonderful again. We can make make the internet great again.
MIGA. Yeah, right. Exactly. There you go.
So anyways, and our audience got me on MSNBC. I mean, how the hell did they do that? They sent in emails and pictures and videos. They sent in everything, and they helped me to get a meeting there when I had no chance at all. And then they allowed me to be a guest host. And Dylan Ratigan, I don't know if anybody remembers, but it was an amazing guy, amazing. And he left CNBC after starting their two most popular shows because in 2008 he said the banks did it. It was their fault. And CNBC's like, get him off the air. Get him off the air.
Yeah.
So then he goes to MSNBC. He gets me as a guest host because he's brave and courageous. And then I kill it in the ratings. Again, all our audience right. Watches, etc. So then I get that as a gig. And then Keith Olbermann leaves and goes to Current TV. That opens up a slot. So I get 6 o'clock. All of a sudden, I'm on, almost prime time on MSNBC. Yeah. And the reason I wanted to go to MSNBC is because I wanted to be able to affect the national conversation. Right. I think that if progressives get a mic that is large enough, it will make all the difference. So then, long story short, I killed it again in the ratings when I had 6 o'clock. And in fact, I had the best ratings they ever had at 6 o'clock. Okay. At that point.
Yeah.
So what went wrong? Why am I still not on MSNBC? Well, so that's where the illuminating part comes in. So I write about this a little bit in Justice is Coming, but I also write about other people's experience at MSNBC and other cable news outlets. And anyone who is either a really great reporter like Ashley Banfield, and I can tell you why, or is a progressive, is not at all welcome on cable news. And so I can give you specific instances where they made that very, very clear. And so I decided after getting a lecture about how Washington was not happy with my tone, right. literal, okay? I decided, nope, I'm going in the opposite direction. I'm going balls to the wall. Yeah. I'm going to give the audience what they actually want, not management what they want. And that's why my ratings killed it, because you can do a show for the audience. I mean, how the hell did we rise up, Young Turks, from nothing? I had no money. We're in a one-bedroom apartment. We got the studio inside the apartment. My girlfriend's going to USC graduate school. She's yelling at us in the middle of the show to get off the goddamn computer, and we only have one. And now we're at 400 to 500 million views a month. Okay, how did we do that? Because we speak truth to power, and when we do, people flock to it because it is sorely lacking in American media. If you like, I can give you the examples from MSNBC where they do not do that, and that makes all the difference.
I would love some of those examples, but I just got to say that as someone who at the time was working in conservative media, because I worked for many years with Talk Radio Network and many of the right wing hosts there, and someone who was desperately and probably naively trying to carve out a space for some progressive media through the show that I did at the time. I was just enormously pissed that Al Sharpton ended up getting that slot, because I know that as excellent as he can be on some things, he is willing to play the game, and you were not willing to play the game. And I really wanted it to be someone as focused and driven and aggressive as you. And it was clear to me that that's just not the way. I probably should have learned, because I know back in 2003, they had Michael Savage on for a couple of months, and they did what they did to Phil Donahue. So, I really should have known, but I was younger and more naive at the time. And you've seen it from the inside, and you can demonstrate that essentially MSNBC really is just kind of a steam valve in a way for the real progressive base in America. And as good as it can be sometimes in terms of providing basic information, again, it's channeled towards safe and non-revolutionary channels. And clearly people were telling you exactly which channels to go in.
Yeah, and so look, we interviewed this lady back in 2016, and she was a Hillary Clinton supporter, and she gave the best answer for being a Hillary supporter. She said, "I don't want a revolution. I feel pretty comfortable, and I just want to keep things going." Yeah. And I thought, well, okay, then you're right to be a Hillary Clinton supporter, right? Mm-hmm. And New York Times, for example, their readership, if we're being honest, and if they're being honest, are the top 10%.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what do? They appeal to their audience, which is the top 10%, which wants to hear that everything's going great, because it is for them. And so, but the release valve is absolutely necessary. And the facade of being good people and doing the right things. And I don't mean to say that they're not good people. The New York Times readers, the MSNBC viewers and stuff, they're perfectly lovely people. They just want comforting things that make their view of reality seem true. And if they find out that the bottom 90% are greatly suffering, it's going to discomfort them. They are not going to like it. Okay. Yeah. And here's who else doesn't like finding out that the bottom 90% in America is hurt and they're angry. Advertisers, they hate it. Okay, here's another group that doesn't like it. The politicians, because they're already on top. They love this system, right? This is the system that brought them to the very top. So they do not want to change that system. By the way, number one advertisers for cable news, I should be clearer. They appear to be the number one advertisers, but maybe there's details that show they're a little bit less than that. But obviously a giant advertiser for cable news is politicians, the politicians themselves. In the last midterm election, they spent $17 billion. Almost all of that went to mainstream media. So there's David Schuster used to work at MSNBC and a lot of other cable outlets, Fox News even. He's on our team now. He's at TYT. He told me he did a story about money in politics. A local Washington, D.C. station, general manager pulls it and says, we're not doing it. Schuster goes into his office, says, what's going on? And the general manager walks him out to the bullpen where all the reporters, producers, editors are. Says, David, you see all these guys? Money in politics pays their salary. We're not running that story. Okay. Wow. So now that's the big picture. And then in the little picture, that's why when I yelled at a former Republican congressman because he was proposing to cut Social Security, I got a talking to by management. Mm-hmm. We do not get aggressive, even if they are Republicans. We just stay calm and tell everybody that everything is okay. Well, man, it's not okay. If this sumbitch cuts their Social Security, people are going to be really, really hurt. There is a real world out there. And the job of mainstream media is to be the matrix and make it appear that that world doesn't exist. And instead, it's a hunky-dory world where everything is lovely and your steak tastes good. And don't worry about it. Let's just keep going exactly as we are now. And by the way, that's not biased. It's objective to love the status quo. It's objective to love this current corrupt system. And it's objective, they claim, to be in favor of corporate rule.
Right.
And it is not objective. They privilege their bias massively.
And the disconnect that people experience when they see what reality is and when they hear that message pushed out in the media alienates them tremendously and often pushes them into right-wing nut jobbery. It's something that divides us, because if we confronted reality the way it was, we would be a lot more unified than we are. But what this does is actually specifically divide us into different camps. Some of us who are in a more stable position, maybe have had more education, or maybe just through chance, go on the left side, and then there are others who fall into the right camp. But ultimately, we're reacting to the same forces. We're reacting to the same sucky things that are happening to most of us out there, and just we bounce in different directions. But we all need health care, and we all need housing, and we all have these needs. And sometimes we strike out at others, and sometimes we take it internally and say, what can we do about it? But that's what the system is designed to do. And that's what these gatekeepers that you've dealt with have pushed us into. So I'm kind of wondering, because one of your opening chapter is America is progressive. With those kind of gatekeepers, with that kind of status quo establishment, how do you maintain faith that America is indeed progressive and that something can actually be done to overcome those forces that are locking us down?
Yeah. So great points. Great question, Beowulf. So number one, chapter 1 is about how we're progressive, as you said, and it's indisputable. You see it in the numbers. There's every issue, 2/3 of the country is progressive. Yet that's weird. You never heard that on cable, did you? You never saw that in the New York Times. You never heard that on NPR. No. And I love these places. I grew up with these things. I believed in these things. I watched all of the Sunday talk shows as a 10-year-old kid when I first came to the country. I love politics. I'm a political nerd, and I wanted it to be true, but it isn't true. So why do we not win when we're 2/3 of the country? Because of Chapter 5. That's the Matrix. That's the media that are all multi-billion-dollar corporations, and their advertisers are also all multi-billion-dollar corporations. So that is why when it's when it's a social issue, all of a sudden they love dividing us, right? Yeah. So culture wars. Okay, can you believe DeSantis took away this from African American history? And can you believe that the Democrats are going after your children? Blah blah blah. Hate each other. Right? Yeah. Meanwhile, we forget that 2/3 of us agree on almost every policy issue, right? And then cable news thinks mission accomplished. Right. And so if you notice, the minute that anyone suggests something progressive, like, for example, erasing student debt or even easing student debt, all of a sudden, we show this on Young Turks all the time, all of a sudden, Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC are all united. They're all against it. Yeah. What happened? I thought MSNBC was the left-wing channel. I thought CNN was in the middle. No, on economic issues, all of the corporate media is 100% united. They're always against the progressive position, and they take positions that are enormously popular, and they call them radical. And they take radical corporatist positions that Joe Manchin holds and call them moderate. Right. I mean, it is a macro lie that has deceived the American people on a massive scale.
Yeah, and they will spend far more time turning their fire on their left than they will on the supposed enemy, Trump or the right wing or the larger corporate wing, which is keeping all of these things in place. They would far rather attack radical Democrats, quote unquote, than they would the supposed people who are literally fascist and dismantling democracy as we know it. It's just astounding to me.
Beowulf, I don't even think it's close. Yeah. They would much, 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 much rather have Trump than Bernie. And they show it and they prove it. When Bernie, this is also in the book, when Bernie took the lead and won the first 3 states in 2020, Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada,